A driverless car to take you anywhere you want to go.
It's just kind of surreal.
It's like something out of a science fiction movie.
See no driver in there.
But on the streets of San Francisco, it is very real and a very viral reality. Some companies will drive, others will stall. How did we get here? Where will the autonomous vehicle industry go? We found out as we explore a driverless tomorrow. To make one car drive a lot of godfathers. The history of the automobile has many godfathers. Carl Benz created the first gas-powered automobile. Henry Ford brought vehicles to the masses. Enzo Ferrari took cars into high gear. But what about driverless cars? Several names stand out: Sebastian Thrun, Chris Urmson, and Red Whitaker.
Ladies and gentlemen from Caltech.
All came to prominence during the DARPA Grand Challenges, a race of self-driving vehicles created in 2004 by the U.S. Department of Defense to spur innovation in autonomous vehicles. But decades before their pioneering work, a team of German engineers developed a car that could navigate traffic on its own. They were led by a college professor.
I'm Ernst Dickmans. I was the first who put a self-driving car on the road in the early 1980s. This is where I work.
Ernst Dickmans is nearly 90 years old now. He lives in a small town near Munich, far from Silicon Valley.
This is what the vehicle does. This is how the camera is stabilized.
He rarely talks publicly about his role in the driverless vehicle revolution. Dickmans was a pioneer in developing dynamic computer vision, the technology that lets today's driverless cars see around them. In the 1960s and 70s, he worked as an engineer with the German Aerospace Research Establishment, analyzing the trajectory of rockets. His work with image processing played a big role, even when the processing power in computers could not keep up with his dreams.
There were several institutes that did image evaluation on static images from satellites and aircraft. On large computers, it took about 10 minutes to evaluate one of those images. But at the same time, we could observe that the computing power of microprocessors increased by a factor of 10 every 4 to 5 years. So I came to the conclusion that during the rest of my lifetime, it should be able to really work on real-time image sequences.
His work was mostly being done out of the public eye. Funding for artificial intelligence research dried up in the mid-1970s. It was the first AI winter. The industry began to collapse. The U.S. Defense Department's research arm, DARPA, cut back its research. But Dickmans and his team kept pushing forward, and by the mid-1980s were ready to hit the road with a self-driving vehicle.
Our results in simulation have been so successful that we decided to have it developed into a self-driving car. This van was equipped with the first generation of our vision systems based on Intel processors, 8086. It took a dozen of those to evaluate parts of the images, who were able to drive in 1986-87 at the maximum speed of the vehicle up to 96 kilometers per hour.
Development of self-driving vehicles in the U.S. was moving at a slower pace, but the nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island in 1979 caused a resurgence. Cleaning up radioactive waste was hazardous for humans, so in 1983, a team of scientists at Carnegie Mellon University developed a semi-autonomous robot that went into radioactive areas to analyze the contamination. The team was led by Red Whitaker, another of the early pioneers of driverless cars.
My career has developed thinking machines.
Machines like the Terragator. Developed around the same time as the 3 Mile Island cleanup by engineers at Carnegie Mellon's Robotics Center, it was the first autonomous vehicle to get out of the lab and into public areas. It was a big step forward, but movement was painstakingly slow.
The Terragator was a little bit like a big desk with 6 wheels, driving down sidewalks, knowing the difference between grass and concrete and staying on the path. The lasers spun one mirror to make a fan of LiDARs, and a robot could understand the world by moving like a push broom and seeing a surface. That was done with one camera.
Eventually, more cameras were added for a 3-dimensional perspective to keep the robots from bumping into trees, poles, and fire hydrants. By 1986, Carnegie Mellon developed its own autonomous vehicle, the NavLab. It was a Chevy van big enough to carry generators, computers, sensors, and humans, analyzing the data in real time.
It was the first one that really looked like a car. There was a big limit to its maximum speed, its capability for carrying and powering things, and particular distinction was the need to get our researchers inside such that in real-time interaction, it was possible to program, to correct.
The first NavLab had a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour.
Slow down a little more.
The next iteration could drive up to 70 miles an hour.
So here we are approaching the DC area, coming in the George Washington Parkway. Still under automated control.
By 1995, the NavLab drove itself mostly the entire way from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. using 2 cameras, cruise control, and a laptop computer. Advances in computing power let the operating system read the highway 15 times a second. The German public has been in love with the automobile since its invention in the 19th century. That love affair continues to this day. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi, Volkswagen, Porsche. German ingenuity has driven innovation in the car market for generations. Taking the human driver out of the car and letting the vehicle do the driving may sound futuristic, but it's been a pursuit of the oldest automobile manufacturer.
In 1886, Carl Benz invented the first automobile, and in 1896, Gottlieb Daimler invented the first ever truck. It was called at the time the motorized goods wagon, and believe it or not, Gottlieb Daimler had to fight the horse lobbyist because they said it would take away jobs from horse breeders and those operating carriages.
This is the SEL 500.
Changing the way people think about cars and how they are driven has pushed Ernst Dickmans to pave a path forward. But it was a horse that inspired Dickmans to start thinking about self-driving vehicles at a very early stage in his life.
As a boy, I've been working with horses at a farm. At the age of 12, they got a tractor. And the main difference was that, of course, the tractor has many horsepowers, but it also has a disadvantage because you always have to be full of attention because the horses, they learned to go along the side of the road and to find the correct direction when going home. But the tractor, you always had to be aware that you are in charge of any motion the tractor makes. So my very early impression was that this was one field of technology which should be developed in the near future, if the computing power is there. At that time, there was no hope that the computers are sufficiently powerful to do this.
So fast forward 100 years after the first automobile was invented, in 1986, Ernst Dickmans invented the first self-driving car, based on a Mercedes-Benz van that he outfitted with sensors and cameras, and actually got to drive over the highway autonomously at 97 kilometers per hour.
Dickman's built a system entirely different from what was being developed in the United States. U.S. engineers were building systems that depended on LiDAR, radar, and GPS to position the vehicle and let it see the road, something Dickman's calls confirmation vision. Dickman's system, which he calls Pathfinder Vision, allows autonomous vehicles to see anywhere by just analyzing the path in front of it.
And there was this distinction between the two types of vision systems. Our system does the entire recognition of the environment, both where the roads are and how far you are off the roads. And we had no information on where the vehicle was on the road. While in the US, they always had the information from the global positioning systems, GPS, so they knew where they were on the roads. And all they had to do in the first demonstration of the Grand Challenge was to avoid obstacles on the road, not to find the roads. So this is the big difference.
So we've still got robots active on the course.
Then later on in 2007, they did the Urban Challenge. There were obstacles on the roads, and the US used radar and LiDAR in order to detect those, while we did everything just by vision. So we had a complete vision systems like humans do. If we look at the road, we see where the road is and whether there are obstacles and other vehicles on the road and how they are moving. The main difference was that we were the first to apply dynamical models looking at 3D space and time simultaneously.
We're pulling up and docking to the hopper bin, and everything will slide out.
In the hills above Napa Valley's wine country, Anthony Lewandowski has deployed autonomous technology to cargo trucks in this quarry, similar to Dickman's Pathfinder Vision. His Pronto AI driver relies mostly on cameras to navigate a changing environment. Wow, you're not even driving.
No, I'm not driving.
Tesla's approach to its full self-driving capability also depends mainly on visible light and two-dimensional maps, not GPS or LiDAR, which Elon Musk calls a limitation.
Hello, from Waymo.
By contrast, Waymo, the most successful self-driving vehicle operator, uses LiDAR and radar to map its environment and combines that data with what cameras are seeing.
Radar does have the big advantage that you can handle fog and light rain, while LiDAR is more precise laterally, but it also has the disadvantage that it breaks down in fog. If you drive on rough terrain, then the vehicle bounces around, and if the cameras are mounted fixed onto the vehicle, then the images are smeared.
Imagine shooting video on a camera while you're running. The video will be bouncy and each individual frame blurry. But you may not have noticed that you don't see shaky images with your own eyes. Your brain blocks your eye movements and blurry motion caused by your body movements to give you a clear vision. Dickman's used similar techniques for his Pathfinder Vision.
Our eyes, they are geared to inertial sensors in the ear, and there are cross signals fed from the ear to the eye. They do a motion compensation, and we did the same. We looked at having cameras mounted on two-axis platforms, and we also looked at doing inertial feedback of angular rates, and then we get stabilized images.
Funding for artificial intelligence had ups and downs through the next 20 years, as funding for machine learning dried up. And the focus shifted from advanced computing to personal desktop computers. In the U.S., government programs like the Strategic Computing Initiative shut down. But not before setting the foundation for driverless vehicles by showing how video cameras, laser scanners, and navigation systems could one day allow a computer to drive a vehicle.
The Americans, of course, noticed that we were the ones with the highest performance level.
Is it possible that America was jolted into action to pour more investments and be more intentional about developing this technology because of how far Dickmans and his German team have gotten? Quite possibly. They knew without a funding push, it would be impossible to get ahead.
They went to the American Senate and said, if you want to have really autonomous systems, you have to get up funding. And we get up funding only if this is a project where the Senate demands that sometime in the future the ground vehicles should be capable of doing part of their missions autonomously.
Well, shortly after that, the DARPA autonomous races in the desert became a reality.
Launching bot number 7.
In 2004, the Pentagon organized the DARPA Grand Challenge to spur innovation in driverless vehicles. The race across the Mojave Desert attracted scientists from the nation's top universities who converted regular cars into self-driving vehicles.
And I've been myself in the United States in 2004 and saw how all the groups failed.
After none of the autonomous vehicles in the first DARPA race reached the finish line, the race was repeated the following year. The DARPA races brought together a who's who of scientists who would shape today's autonomous vehicle industry. Names like Sebastian Thrun, Anthony Lewandowski, Chris Urmson, Red Whitaker, Kyle Vogt. Thrun was the head of the Stanford team that won the 2005 race with their vehicle, Stanley. Anthony Lewandowski's self-driving motorcycle Ghost Rider did not fare well in the initial race. It failed at the starting line. That didn't stop Thrun from hiring Lewandowski to work at Google X, the company's semi-secret research facility.
You know, we've kind of both said, like, okay, well, we want to build some new technology, so we made kind of the precursors of what became Street View.
Together, Thrun and Lewandowski were hired by Google to develop its self-driving car project, which later became Waymo.
And as a godfather of self-driving car, I take incredible pride as to what's happening today. I talk to many teams all the times. I've worked with my friend Larry Page on flying cars. It's really moving fast.
You said it. You're the godfather.
Sometimes people say that, yeah.
No, but you said it yourself.
I think it's important that we spend our time on this planet wisely. And I think the best way to do this is to really think about how can we make the world better for other people. And I was very fortunate as a computer scientist. I was afforded the possibility to work on an impactful technology like self-driving cars and make my own contributions. Me alongside thousands of other people.
When all is said and done, who do you think is like the godfather? Is it you?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think there's a single person. To me, it's really about engineers thinking about a problem, solving it, and bringing a product that improves people's lives. That's why there's no pioneer. There's no guy. It's a continual effort, and everybody's building on the ideas of others and making progress.
I think it's fair to call Ernst Dickmans the godfather of the self-driving car. There might be multiple godparents. In the 1990s, he was the sole example of making progress on this very nascent field. It was far away from commercial deployment. The safety wasn't anywhere where it had to be practical. Neither were the costs. The vision of training and machine learning was really invented at Carnegie Mellon by Dean Pomerleau and others. And we built on this at Stanford and then later at Google, and just refined those technologies to be more capable and safer and faster.
Chris, what did Dr. Whitaker say?
He was very impressed. He's very happy. This is a big step for us.
Chris Urmson was a PhD robotics student under Thrun at Carnegie Mellon University, working alongside Red Whitaker.
You know, I've been fortunate in my career to have been building on a foundation from amazing other people, and then we've done some work over the last 20 years as well.
Like Thrun and Lewandowski, Urmson participated in the DARPA races for the CMU team. His vehicle, Sandstorm, went the furthest distance in the 2004 race. 3 years later, his autonomous Chevy Tahoe named Boss won the race.
So, Chris Urmson, Sebastian Thrun, Anthony Lewandowski are grand masters of the trade.
Urmson later joined Google and was the main engineer behind the software code that ran its self-driving vehicles. Urmson is credited for transforming Google's research project into the commercial venture that Waymo has become.
We have, I think, 5 of them around the truck.
Which could be why some people say he is one of the modern-day godfathers of driverless technology. Someone who really pushed the industry forward to where it is today. Yet he himself looks elsewhere for that honor.
I don't know that any of us get that. I would look to someone like Ernst Dickmann, who was well ahead of the time in the work he was doing in Germany.
With such a head start, why didn't the autonomous industry in Germany take off? After all, it was the first to develop the technology and did so faster than scientists in the United States. The answer is money, and the millions of dollars flowing into Silicon Valley.
To push technology, you need the right environment, not just the right people, the right funding, the right structure. I really admire what Germany did in the 90s, my colleague Ernst Dickmann. But in terms of funding, ability to raise, say, $1 billion, Silicon Valley just stands out. And as Google got interested, they really had a possibility to fund and support this work at a scale never seen before. That's why California has become the epicenter for self-driving cars.